Now the serpent was more subtle. Subtle is an interesting word here because it means kind of fog-like and vague and difficult to detect. So it's something that lurks and is hidden. So that's what the serpent is. It's in the domain of hidden things than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And the serpent said unto the woman, hey, hasn't God said you shouldn't eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, the central fruit, God has said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. For God knows that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes will be opened, and you will be as gods, knowing good and evil. All right, so there's another implication there. We already saw that there's the implication that Adam and Eve are not self-conscious. And now there's the implication that their eyes aren't open, or at least that they're not open fully in some sense. They're not open, for example, to the knowledge of good and evil. And that seems to be associated somehow with death in some strange way. Okay, so, and it's the serpent talking to the woman. So the serpent is the tempter of the woman. So the question is, well, why in the world would that be? I showed you those representations of Mary, right? Holding the infant up in the air with her foot on the snake. So you think, well, who's more self-conscious, women or men? And the answer to that is, women are more self-conscious than men. And even further, you might say that women taught men to be self-conscious. And I believe that to be the case. Maybe babies taught women to be self-conscious, but women taught men to be self-conscious, and they still teach them that all the time. Because there's nothing that makes a man more self-conscious than to be rejected by a woman that he desires. So the woman is always offering self-consciousness to men, and it isn't necessarily a gift that they exactly appreciate. And that motif, of course, runs through the Adam and Eve story centrally, because Eve is damned forever in some sense for making Adam self-conscious. Well, he didn't want to be self-conscious. Things were pretty good when his eyes were closed and he was wandering around not worrying about whether he was naked or not. Well, the women became self-conscious. Why? Because of snakes. Well, maybe, right? Maybe that's exactly what happened, you know? So imagine we're being preyed upon for millions of years by predatory reptiles, right? And we become more and more alert to threat and more alert to threat. And then one day we get so alert to threat that we can see threat lurking in the future. And then all of a sudden we become aware of the future, and then we become aware of death, and then we're really self-conscious. But it's pretty good if you want to keep the snakes down, which we've been doing quite successfully ever since then. But it's a big price to pay. We got so damn sensitive to threat that we were finally able to conceive the ultimate threat, not proximal threats, but the fact of threat itself, and the fact of mortality itself, and the fact of finitude itself. And maybe women learned that because they become painfully aware of the mortal limitations of their infants first, right? This small thing could die, could end, and certainly as an object of predation. And you can imagine, God only knows how many infants human beings lost to predators. I mean, I told you at one point, I believe that there was a cat that was found that had a skull and jaws that were specialized for biting the skulls of proto-humans. So one long tooth at the back that would drive right through the back of the skull, so the cat could put its teeth here and drive the tooth right into the back of the skull. So, you know, that's a good enough dragon for our intents and purposes, I would say.